My goodness, I can't believe a coach would tell his athlete to do something like that. As coaches ourselves, we like to find out about the training philosophies and approaches used by other coaches.
And as a bit of a history buff, I like to look at how running training philosophies have changed over time.
So, John was super excited when he found a book about an Olympic coach from the past.
So yes, Training by Harry Andrews, written around the year 1903. So firstly, I was intrigued to find out who Harry Andrews was. He actually coached runners, cyclists and boxers, and he was active in the period before and after the First World War, and he actually took several athletes to the Olympic Games of 1912 and 1920 and 1924.
So what was interesting is a lot of the advice was what we would actually expect to hear today.
But there was one piece of advice in there that we found absolutely shocking, and I bet it's something none of you have ever tried in your training.
So in this video, we're going to bring you 10 timeless training tips that Coach Harry advocated to his athletes, and they still hold true today.
And if you hang on to the end, we'll reveal that shocking piece of advice he gave his runners that I don't think any of you will have ever come across before.
So one thing many coaches advise is to avoid overtraining by having a rest day at least once a week.
So let's see what Harry had to say about that. He says, for several reasons, quite apart from religious ones, I believe in 6 days being sufficient. He says, a day off after every 6 is a fine preventative of overtraining and consequent staleness. But he did advise on that 7th day, you could go for a long, pleasant country walk. So if you are enjoying this video, please consider hitting that like button to help with our algorithms. And now back to the training tips.
So another bit of advice by coaches is to make sure you get enough sleep. Now, normally they say around about 8 hours or more if you can.
Yeah, sleep is when the body absorbs many of those gains from training and makes itself stronger and has time to recover from any niggles you may be picking up. Yeah, so Harry says, to enjoy the best of health and obtain physical perfection, most athletes need about 9 hours sleep. And he also advocates when in hard training, after the midday dinner, you should drop off for a nap and add another hour without any disadvantage. So Harry's athletes are sleeping up to 10 hours per day.
I wish. So diet, yes, it's really important that as runners we get the right nutrients in. We often eat a little bit more carbs than non-runners, but it's also important to make sure you get enough protein, fats and all the micronutrients that your body's going to need for all that training you're going to be doing.
So Harry Andrews has some quite defined views on diet. He was convinced that an ordinary everyday plain meat diet is far superior to all non-eating or fasting plans. He wasn't a fan of fad eating diets. He actually prescribed what he would give a person training under him 3 meals a day, breakfast, a couple of new laid eggs and meat, followed by a little cream or marmalade or both, and half a pound of fresh fish or toast, or perhaps a steak or chop. So that's breakfast taken care of. And this was in the era where people used to eat their main meal of the day in the middle of the day. That'd be roast beef or mutton or boiled mutton, poultry, game, milk puddings, stewed fruits, and something we'd agree with today, plenty of green vegetables. He wasn't a fan of potatoes. I mean, Dawn mentioned the importance of carbohydrates. He was against potatoes, against shellfish, and all kinds of cheese. And as a treat between meals, if you felt a bit peckish, you're allowed a biscuit or two in the morning, and possibly an apple, and a biscuit again at 9 o'clock in the evening before rolling into bed at 10, as per his sleep advice. Another important consideration we face as runners is to run in the way that we enjoy and what we feel we're good at. We made a video a few weeks ago about whether I should consider I failed to run the marathon time, my 10k times that I was capable of, or whether I should be happy I ran exceptionally good 10k times compared to my marathon performance. Over the years, circumstances have led me to try lots of different types of running. From a 400 metre track race in my club, not for me. Steeplechase, which I enjoyed in a weird kind of way. I've tried fell races, it's really not my thing. due to my proprioception issues. I tried trail racing, which I'm okay, but still not that steady on my feet. So I've worked out over the years, my happy running place is on the road. There we go, nearly went there. Between 30 minutes and about 2 hours. So that's what I do now.
Harry came across many runners who he thought were not training for their optimal distance.
Yes, he said he came across people who had run for years before finding their correct distance. Very many cases have come before me of men who have been running for a year as mediocre sprinters, when quite by chance they have run a longer distance and have discovered it is their correct line. So the advice would be, try different distances so you know what best suits your running.
So drugs, sadly an issue that's been around in sport for as long as I can remember, and way before that. And sadly we're living in an era now where certain countries have a reputation for finding even more inventive ways to avoid the drug testers. We've had very prominent long distance coaches being busted for their practices. Personally, I find cheating in sport an abhorrent practice.
So, back in the early 1900s, some endurance athletes took strychnine, heroin and amphetamines to alter their perception of fatigue.
So yes, this was a practice that Harry learned from some American coaches. He said, I've tried them on men I've trained, and as a result have no words of condemnation of their use strong enough to express my mind on the subject. So he was dead against the use of artificial stimulants in sport. Go Harry.
Another issue that Harry raised was his athletes drinking alcohol. Quite recently, you may have watched a video where we ourselves talked about giving up alcohol. We always enjoyed a glass of wine or a pint of beer, but quite recently, after John had a bit of a health scare, we decided to knock it on the head totally.
So Harry's take on alcohol was, to those unaccustomed to stimulants, in other words alcohol, there is no advantage to be gained by taking them. So if you're teetotal, don't start drinking to gain an athletic advantage. To those who are not teetotalers, there is no advantage. In fact, there's a disadvantage in knocking them off entirely. So if you're teetotal, stay that way. If you're a moderate drinker, stay that way. He thought there'd be no effect on athletic performance either way.
Not quite sure about that one. In general, walking is great for runners. It adds to your endurance. You can go out for miles without adding extra stress to your body, and it promotes good blood flow, which allows your body to recover from all those hard training miles.
That's right, and Harry, well, 120 years ago, really agreed with that. He actually advocated each of his runners do a 2-mile walk before breakfast. And then for those of his athletes who were long distance training, which in his view was 10 miles and upwards, he advocated a 5-mile walk after breakfast at a fair pace and another 5-mile walk in the evening. And at weekends, up to 30 miles walking. He said any specific running needed to be done at a track, but then his runners, he quoted, walking can scarcely be overdone. So if you weren't running, eating boiled beef and mutton, you were out walking if you're Harry's boy, before having your biscuit at 9 o'clock at night. The importance of strength and conditioning is something we've alluded to many times recently on this channel, so I won't go into it in detail, but suffice to say that regular strength and conditioning has kept me largely injury and niggle free this year and led to my most successful and happy year of running for over a decade.
Harry was a big believer in strength and conditioning.
He was a big advocate of skipping for conditioning the muscles, and if you're a fan of gardening, you'd fit in with Harry's world. He says a bit of digging is advantageous to exercising the muscles. When the weather wasn't so good, he advocated the use of dumbbells for indoor exercise and strength.
So another thing that we find really beneficial is having a sports massage. It's something we like to do at least once a month, and probably if we could, we'd have one at least once a week. But we do have a massage stick at home, and we also do self-massage.
Right, well, if you're working under Harry Andrews and preparing for the Olympics, you would have had this. He'd advocate his runners having a massage twice a day. It is, he says, the most important modern method of getting the body fit. And one thing he advised against though was glove rubbing. So have any of you been glove rubbed? Let us know in the comments below. Quite seriously, For him, massage had a marked effect upon an athlete's muscles and their general system, and got them ready for the next bout of exercise.
And we know we always feel great after we've had a massage, and it does really make your legs feel good for that next run.
But not if you've been glove rubbed. If you were to ask Dawn and myself what we consider the strongest aspect of our running, for me, I'd have to say mental resilience. For those of you who followed our running for a while, you'll know we're very consistent with our mileage. We enter races regularly, not always successfully, but you'll hardly ever see us being downcast by a bad result. We pick ourselves up, and as the saying goes at the end of every video, we keep on keeping on. You'll hear a lot on many channels about the psychology of running, and many prominent runners, professional and semi-professional runners, actually employ psychologists to support them with that aspect of their running. So psychology, mental resilience, positivity is a massively important thing in running. And as I said, I think it's the strongest thing in my running arsenal.
So, even back in 1903, they realised the importance of running psychology.
So Harry had a word for pre-race nerves, which he called funk, a very contemporary word. He said it was no bad thing to be slightly anxious before a race because it would help you focus once that starting gun fired. He also said that if you were excessively worried before a race, thinking or talking about something else would help take your mind off any pre-race nerves and help you perform to your potential.
So there you have it, guys. 10 top training tips that would not be out of place in a coach's manual today.
But there was one piece of advice in this book that I bet you've never come across before, you've never heard given to an athlete, and we're going to share that with you right now. So Harry Andrews was not a big fan of his athletes being what he called in the married state. He says a married man is not the best state for an athlete, and that in all cases continence is essential to success. So what on earth can he mean by continence? Well, he goes on to say that even if a man isn't married, he needs to guard against a tendency to involuntary losses during sleep.
Wonder what that would be.
Harry's solution is for a man to sleep always on his side, and the way to achieve sleeping on your side is to sew a cotton reel into the back of your nightshirt, so you would not be lying on your back in the night, and therefore you would not get these involuntary losses which would weaken your system, according to Harry. So guys, I'm sure we can put our heads together and work out what Harry was advising against there, and I do not believe I've ever seen that mentioned anywhere before in any coaching manual, any running book I've ever come across. Have you?
Certainly not. So we hope that you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, please don't forget to give us a like.
And please consider subscribing to this channel. We think if you have enjoyed watching this video, you'll enjoy seeing Dawn put all the good training advice, apart from the final tip, into practice recently at the Abingdon Marathon, which we'll put up here.
So until next time, keep on keeping on.
Keep on keeping on.